I want to talk today about finance capital as an enemy of a productive economy. We all know how the business press or economic theory explains that for some reason or other, finance is required for a healthy economy. To give you an idea, I want to read a quotation from Frederick Mishkin. Mishkin was a governor of the Federal Reserve Board and a close friend of Ben Bernanke. So here's what he had to say. The financial system is like the brain of the economy. It is a coordinating mechanism that allocates capital to building factories, houses, and roads. If capital goes in the wrong direction or does not flow at all, the economy will operate inefficiently and economic growth will be low. Even the strongest work ethic cannot compensate for a misallocation of capital. Working hard will not by itself make a country rich, because hardworking workers will not be productive unless they work more with the right amount and kinds of capital. Brain is more important than brawn, and similarly, an efficient financial system is more important than hard work to an economy's success. Let's parse that for a while. Is it true that a financial system operates like an intelligent brain that actually puts capital to where it can be most productive? I think the case for that is relatively weak. At the same time, a financial system can and does act as a mechanism for transferring transactions in a modern economy. So an efficient banking system at least would work something like plumbing. That is, the plumber would make sure that the good would somehow go to its best possible use. The question then is, does it work that way? Finance capital has several problems. That it fails to address. First of all, finance capital imposes excessive demands on the economy. One, it has a very short-term time horizon. This is very important to understanding the economy. Many, if not most, important investments require a long time to come to fruition. Finance capital does not allow, in general, the investment of a project that takes a long time to fruition, especially when the returns from that project are uncertain. And yet the most important economic investments are the uncertain ones, the investments that take the economy into a new direction, that promise the possibility, but not the certainty, of great productivity. So in this sense, the short-term time horizon turns out to be antithetical to a productive economy. Secondly, finance capital imposes very high hurdle rates for business. In other words, finance capital requires a rate of return that will satisfy the expectations of finance capital. But in doing so, it will stifle, it will actually exterminate many productive businesses, many productive endeavors that are actually performing very important, useful, productive activities. The only problem is that the rate of profit falls short of the demands of finance capital. The same rate of profit may be even higher than the average rate of profit because finance capital requires extraordinarily high investments, extraordinarily high rates of return in order to make possible the lucrative demands of finance capital. And we see that, of course, in the excessive money that goes to the great titans of finance. Another problem with finance capital is it has a very tenuous relationship with the underlying productive process. That is, the so-called brain of finance has little understanding of the economy as it really is. Instead, it looks at balance sheets and financial projections rather than what the activity actually does. And in this sense, it may be less likely to accommodate activities that could be quite productive in a social or economic sense, even though they do not provide a high rate of return. Think of some examples. That is, a business that may provide, let's say, healthy foods to an underserved, poor neighborhood. It may turn a profit. It may even turn a decent profit. But that profit would be unlikely to meet the expectations of finance capital. So that's another problem with finance capital. Now, one other indication of the problems associated with finance capital is the fact that the financial system in the United States is able, or at least was able, right before the crash, to take in about 40% of all profits. This 40% is, as I mentioned in one of my earlier postings, an underestimate. In any case, is there any possible way that anybody could believe that the financial system has such an effective brain that it's able to justify the accumulation of 40% of the profits in the economy? I think not. In addition, the high returns that finance capital promises also make possible the diversion of some of the most productive people, or potentially productive people in the world, to move into the financial system. So, for example, Wall Street has been hiring scads and scads of mathematicians and physicists in order to find out the most effective way of accumulating profit. These same people could be, or could have been used, to produce something very useful. Instead, they set about creating ways in order to extract value for their employers. In any case, the financial system tends to be more extractive than productive. Now, in saying this, I know that there are many, many cases in which experts could show you the contribution of finance to a modern economy. The question is, could this be done as plumbing without the extraordinary profits that finance gets? How many jobs have been eliminated from the U.S. economy merely because of the financial perspective? The most famous exponent of this was probably Jack Welch, who was head of GE. And I think it was in 1991, he gave a very famous speech at the Plaza Hotel in which he explained what he was going to do. He was going to cut out anything that did not make an adequate rate of return. He moved jobs away to other countries, so much so that he became known as Neutron Jack. In the end, General Electric, his company, began to resemble a financial operation, much more than an industrial firm, one of the major industrial firms in the country. By the time the 2008 crisis hit, General Electric would have gone bankrupt without the support of the government. What kind of brain would take one of the most successful, albeit a company with a terrible history of labor relations, but would take this company that had been very successful and make it into something that was unsuccessful, even by a capitalist perspective? So I'll finish by saying this. One of the sources of leakage of productive activity from a modern capitalist economy is the excessive power of finance. And so far, there is no indication that there is any political movement, any political organization, any political pressure that would tend to move the economy in a direction that would place any limits on finance capital. Now, I made this talk in light of the earlier talk about the origins of the crisis, and I would say that part of the problem, a major part that most people recognize, was the excessive power of finance. Financial system that wasn't serving the needs of any people, but the needs or the desires of a small number of people who were able to accumulate obscene levels of profit at the expense of the rest of the society. Thank you very much, and I would be happy to hear any comments and corrections to what I've said. So, goodbye.